The Republican National Convention in Florida just days away now. The city of Tampa is bracing itself for a possible hurricane and a storm of protests. Occupy Tampa protesters are descending upon the city. They plan to charter in busloads of people, and it looks like the city is taking every possible precaution, from clearing hundreds of jail beds to drones patrolling the skies. It looks like protesters will remain on close watch. To talk more about what occupiers have in store for the RNC and DNC, Kevin Gostola, blogger for Fire Dog Lake, joins us now. Kevin, welcome. So I want to get your reaction to this very heavy-handed security we are seeing over there in Tampa.
Right. It's a standard, I think, to see this now. We have a national security state in the United States that wants to show itself anytime there is what we call a national special security event. And it definitely puts a lot of, it imposes on people who want to go out and exercise their free speech or engage in First Amendment rights as something that civil liberties organizations and lawyers from groups like the National Lawyers Guild do not hesitate to bring to the public's attention as they go there and watch how police and other security forces handle demonstrations.
Now, we also, here at RT, we cover a lot, drones and their expansion being used here within the U.S., especially domestically, now that they're not finding as much use abroad. And we just found out that a drone will patrol the skies and monitor what's going on the ground over there at the convention. What do you think about that?
It's definitely troubling, but I guess in the proliferation of drones right now, it isn't surprising. And it definitely is something that citizens of this country should consider. I think countries all over the world, those people's citizens should think about having flying robots in the sky policing dissent. It's very troubling. And I think that there's groups out there, one group in particular, EPIC, who have been raising the sort of concerns about how police forces in the United States might use this technology.
And part of how this is being justified is we're hearing a lot of fears being ramped up surrounding the protests, especially in the wake of an this is from the Department of Homeland Security. I have a piece of that memo here. It states, quote, prior to the 2008 RNC, anarchist extremists discussed blockading bridges and skywalks in Minneapolis, Minnesota, targeting local corporate headquarters, taking over a radio station and identifying delegate lodging locations and the location of police stations and emergency routes. FBI and DHS assess with high confidence anarchist extremists will target similar infrastructure in Tampa and Charlotte with potentially significant impacts on public safety and transportation. And after that memo was released, the mainstream media reacted. Here's how they covered this.
Tampa police and federal authorities are planning for the worst, including for rowdy anarchist groups who may try to disrupt the Republican National Convention.
The FBI and DHS issued a bulletin today essentially urging police across the country to watch out for indications that activists in their areas might be planning to go to the conventions to disrupt them in some way. The bulletin is titled, quote, Potential for Violent or Criminal Action by Anarchist Extremists During the 2012 National Political Convention.
The FBI and Department of Homeland Security warned state and local law enforcement that anarchists are targeting the Democratic National Convention in Charlotte, North Carolina, too. And they could even try to use improvised explosive devices.
Now, what do you think about that, Kevin? Do you think protesters as a whole are being branded or stereotyped as anarchists?
I think it's even more critical to say that what this bulletin is intended to do is give authorities the cover to go in and preemptively arrest people ahead of the convention. This is something that happened in 2008 with a group called the RNC Committee. And I think what you're reading from 2008 has to do with that group. And that group is very important for people to understand. They were charged with terrorism, but they weren't charged because they themselves engaged in any activities during the convention. They were being held responsible by authorities because other individuals had engaged in property damage. It's very, very critical for people to know that when these sort of events are being put on by the political elites, you have individuals who are there as activists that are being held and criminalized because they have talked about doing things such as civil disobedience. The emphasis on the blockading of bridges is very important to think about, because you can see if you're a member of a group and you want to get attention for your cause, the sort of gain you might get from placing yourself on a bridge, especially during a high-profile event like the Republican National Convention. When you see that groups are not allowed to get so close to where they're holding the convention, you can understand why groups would want to go and shut down a bridge and attract media, because they can't go where they would like to go. And so I think it's important for people to think what this really does is it gives people the cover. And in fact, final point I'll make here is that the authorities do not consider anarchists to be legitimate protesters. They actually have said that publicly. I wrote about this today, is that they want to separate the anarchists out from the protesters. So that's something that there's undercover teams out there right now doing.
How do they make that distinction?
It's pretty arbitrary. I mean, it has to do with the things that they're hearing people say. And it also has to do with what their informants or infiltrators are feeding back to them. And from what I've been able to tell in researching, there are individuals that have been tracked from, it looks like, Occupy Wall Street in New York City, followed down to the Tampa area, and then I would not be surprised if tomorrow or Sunday there was a raid ahead of the convention, because if you look in the bulletin, one of the ways to mitigate a threat is to arrest people before the convention. So it's a very known tactic, and there isn't much public opposition. For the most part, citizens in this country are okay with getting people off the streets and not giving them the right to protest in order to ensure that violence does not occur.
All right, well, we're seeing authorities take action even before the convention kicks off. Kevin, what are your predictions for how this is all going to play out in the coming days and the coming week?
Well, I would look to prior events. I would look to, let's just start quickly with the RNC in 2008. There were mass arrests during then. Prior to the convention, you had police that were going through and secretly photographing activists and doing really snooping on people. And then recently with the NATO summit in Chicago, what was being done there, stopping and searching people on the basis of how they looked, going after live streamers and detaining them at gunpoint, and swarming people's homes. I expect to see a lot of security swarming around centers where there are activists that are gathering. And I think especially with the tropical storm or hurricane that would be coming, that's just going to make things all the more worse. I think that actually, in effect, will turn the security state there into a much more repressive entity and not willing to take chances. Because the last thing you want is a disaster and a terrorist threat. That's the psychology that they'll be promoting. All
right, well, we have a correspondent that is making her way over there shortly to keep a close eye on how it does all play out. Kevin, appreciate you coming on the show. That was Kevin Gostola, blogger for Fire Dog Lake.